You're not lazy. You're not broken. And you're not behind in life. You're just tired of carrying a weight no one ever taught you how to put down. Right now, if you feel stuck, it probably doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet, heavy, like every day looks almost the same. And even when something good happens, it doesn't really touch you. You wake up, you do what you have to do, you distract yourself when you can, and at night you lie down knowing that tomorrow will look very similar. And the worst part isn't that life is hard. The worst part is that you know you're capable of more, but you can't reach it, like standing in front of a door that should open, but doesn't. So you start asking yourself questions you never wanted to ask. What's wrong with me? Why can everyone else move forward and I can't? Why do I feel like I'm wasting time even when I'm trying? Let me tell you something important, and I want you to hear it slowly. Feeling stuck is not a personal failure. It's a psychological state. Most people think being stuck means you don't want it badly enough, or that you're undisciplined, or that you need motivation. That's wrong. Motivation doesn't disappear for no reason. Energy doesn't vanish randomly. Drive doesn't die overnight. What usually happens is this. You've been moving for too long without feeling safe, seen, or rewarded. And eventually, your mind pulls the emergency brake. Not to punish you, to protect you. Your brain is designed to avoid pain, not chase potential. And if every attempt forward has been connected to pressure, disappointment, fear of failure, comparison, or self-criticism, your nervous system learns something very simple. Moving forward is dangerous, so it slows you down. It numbs you. It makes you procrastinate. It makes you scroll. It makes you sleep more. It makes you doubt yourself. Not because you're weak, because you're human. You don't feel stuck because you're not moving. You feel stuck because you're fighting yourself. Part of you wants growth, change, meaning. Another part of you wants rest, safety, relief. And instead of listening to each other, they're pulling in opposite directions. So you end up frozen. If you're listening to this, chances are you've already tried to fix yourself. You tried routines. You tried discipline. You tried forcing productivity. You tried locking in. You tried motivation videos. You tried telling yourself, this time I'll change. And when it didn't last, you blamed yourself again. But let me ask you something gently. When was the last time you felt calm while trying to improve your life? Not hyped, not pressured, not afraid of falling behind. Calm. Most people never build their future from a calm place. They build it from panic. And panic is not sustainable. Being stuck often means you're exhausted at a level deeper than sleep can fix. It means your mind has been on alert for too long, always evaluating, always comparing, always anticipating the next problem. You don't need a breakthrough. You need permission to slow down without guilt, because guilt is one of the strongest anchors keeping you stuck. You feel guilty for resting, guilty for not being where you should be, guilty for not using your potential, guilty for wanting more, guilty for being tired of trying. That constant guilt creates noise in your head, and in that noise, you can't hear your own intuition anymore. So let's quiet for a moment. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be confused. You are allowed to not have clarity yet. Life is not a race you're losing. It's a direction you're still choosing. And here's something no one tells you. Clarity does not come before movement. It comes from movement, but not forced movement, not dramatic change, not burning your life down. Tiny, honest movement. Right now, you don't need to fix your whole life. You don't need to figure out your future. You don't need a 5-year plan. You need one small act of self-respect. Something so small your mind can't argue with it. Drink water. Clean one surface. Write one sentence. Step outside for 2 minutes. Breathe slowly and deeply for 10 seconds. This isn't about productivity. It's about rebuilding trust with yourself. Because being stuck for a long time breaks that trust. You stop believing your own promises. You stop trusting your motivation. You stop trusting that effort will lead anywhere. So the goal is not to become disciplined. The goal is to become reliable to yourself again. And reliability is built the same way it always is, by doing small things consistently, even when they feel meaningless. Especially when they feel meaningless. You don't need to feel inspired. You don't need to feel confident. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to act without expecting an emotional reward. Most people quit because they expect change to feel good immediately. But early change feels boring, uncomfortable, and invisible. Growth doesn't announce itself. One day, weeks from now, you'll just notice that your thoughts are quieter, that your body feels lighter, that you react differently to problems that used to overwhelm you, and you won't even know exactly when it happened. That's real progress. If you feel stuck, it doesn't mean you're going nowhere. It means you're in the middle of an internal reorganization, and those phases are always uncomfortable. Caterpillars don't know they're becoming butterflies. From the inside, it probably feels like falling apart. So stop demanding certainty from a moment that is meant to teach patience. You are not late. You are not doomed. You are not wasting your life. You are learning how to move forward without abandoning yourself. And that takes time. If you're still listening, that already says something important about you. It means a part of you hasn't given up. It's quiet. It's tired. But it's still here. And that's enough to begin. Just sit with that for a moment. Nothing to fix. Nothing to prove. Just breathing, listening, existing. The next step will reveal itself when your mind stops shouting. And it will. You don't need to rush this moment. If you're still here, listening, reading, breathing, that means something inside you chose not to escape. And that choice matters more than you think. Most people don't feel stuck because they don't know what to do. They feel stuck because they're afraid of what they'll feel if they finally stop running. Silence can be uncomfortable when you've used noise to survive. Think about how often you distract yourself. Not because you enjoy it, but because being alone with your thoughts feels heavy. When you stop, everything catches up at once. Regrets, pressure, old conversations, missed chances, versions of yourself you thought you'd be by now. So you keep moving, scrolling, consuming, staying busy. And slowly, without noticing, your life becomes something you're watching instead of living. Feeling stuck is often the moment when distraction stops working. And that's not a bad thing. That's the moment awareness begins. Awareness hurts at first. It shows you the gap between where you are and where you want to be. But it also shows you something else, that you still care. People who truly give up don't feel stuck. They feel numb. So if this feeling is bothering you, if it's uncomfortable, if it keeps coming back no matter how much you avoid it, that's because it's trying to tell you something. Not you're failing. But something needs to change. The problem is, most people hear that message and immediately panic. They think change has to be massive. Quitting everything. Reinventing themselves overnight. Becoming someone new. And that pressure pushes them right back into paralysis. Real change is quieter than that. It starts with honesty. Ask yourself, without judgment, without drama, what am I actually avoiding right now? Not what you should do. Not what would impress people. Not what sounds productive. What are you avoiding because it scares you emotionally? Maybe it's making a decision. Maybe it's starting and risking failure. Maybe it's finishing and risking judgment. Maybe it's letting go of a version of yourself that no longer fits. Maybe it's admitting that something you wanted doesn't want you back. Avoidance is not laziness. It's fear wearing a practical outfit. And fear doesn't disappear when you yell at it. It softens when it feels understood. You don't need to conquer your fear. You need to approach it slowly, respectfully, like an animal that's been hurt before. Right now, your mind doesn't trust big promises. It's been disappointed too many times. So stop making them. Instead of saying, I'm going to change my life, say, I'm going to show up for 5 minutes. Instead of, I'll never procrastinate again, say, I'll begin badly. Instead of, I need to find my purpose, say, I'll pay attention to what gives me a little energy. Small, honest commitments rebuild confidence faster than dramatic declarations. And here's something important. You are not behind because there is no universal timeline. You only feel behind because you're measuring your internal process against other people's external highlights. You don't see their doubts. You don't see their shortcuts. You don't see what they sacrificed. You don't see what they settled for. Comparison steals context. And without context, you will always feel inadequate. Your life is not late. It's just specific. Specific to your experiences. Specific to your losses. Specific to your strengths. Specific to your pace. And pace matters. Some people sprint early and burn out. Some people walk slowly and last longer than anyone expects. You don't need to catch up. You need to align. Alignment feels calm, even when it's hard. Misalignment feels heavy, even when things look fine from the outside. If you feel stuck, ask yourself this. Where am I forcing myself to be someone I'm not? Where are you saying yes when your body says no? Where are you chasing approval instead of meaning? Where are you performing instead of living? That constant inner resistance drains you, and eventually your system says stop. That's when life feels frozen. Not because you're incapable, but because you've been disconnected from yourself for too long. Reconnection is not glamorous. It's subtle. It happens when you listen to your body instead of ignoring it, when you notice what exhausts you and what nourishes you, when you stop numbing and start feeling, even when it's uncomfortable. Feeling is scary because it makes things real, but avoiding feeling keeps you stuck in the same loop. Here's a truth that might be uncomfortable, but necessary. Sometimes you're stuck because you're waiting to feel ready. Ready is a myth. No one feels ready to become who they're meant to be. They feel afraid, uncertain, underqualified, and tired. They move anyway, not with confidence, with commitment. Confidence comes after action, not before. And action doesn't have to be loud. One email, one page, one conversation, one honest boundary, one decision you've been postponing. You don't need momentum. Momentum is created. And it starts the moment you stop negotiating with the voice that wants to keep you comfortable but unhappy. Comfort is seductive. It promises safety but delivers stagnation. Growth asks for discomfort but gives you yourself back. If you've been stuck for a long time, your biggest fear might not be failure. It might be success. Because success forces you to leave familiar suffering behind. And familiar suffering feels safer than unfamiliar joy. At least in suffering, you know who you are. Growth requires identity change. And identity change is terrifying. So be patient with yourself if you resist it. You're not weak. You're protecting what you know. But you don't have to stay there. You can move gently. You can take one step without knowing the whole path. You can choose progress without self-violence. You don't need to punish yourself into becoming better. You need to support yourself into becoming honest. And honesty is a doorway out of being stuck. Take a breath right now. Not to calm down. Just to notice that you're here. Still breathing. Still listening. Still open. That means the story isn't over. It's just between chapters. And the pause you're in right now is not empty. It's preparing you. Let's keep going. Slowly. If you're still here, there's a reason. Not a dramatic reason. Not destiny. Just something simple and human. You're looking for relief, not escape. Relief from the pressure of becoming. From a noise in your head. From the feeling that you're carrying more than you can explain. Most people think being stuck is about not moving forward. But often, it's about carrying too much of the past into the present. Old expectations. Old disappointments. Old versions of yourself that no longer exist informing decisions you're still making. You might be trying to live a life that made sense for who you were, not who you are now. And that creates friction. You change, but your goals don't. You grow, but your standards don't update. You heal, but your self-image stays frozen in an old wound. So every step feels wrong. Being stuck is sometimes the mind asking for a reevaluation. Not what do I want, but what am I done with? What are you tired of pretending to want? What expectations feel heavy instead of motivating? What dreams were inherited instead of chosen? Letting go of outdated desires can feel like failure, but it's actually maturity. You're allowed to outgrow paths you once prayed for. You're allowed to admit that something you chased no longer fits your nervous system. You're allowed to choose peace over performance. That doesn't make you less ambitious. It makes you more honest. And honesty unlocks energy. Right now, you might feel like you've lost your drive. But drive doesn't disappear. It gets buried under pressure. Pressure to succeed. Pressure to prove yourself. Pressure to justify your existence. When life becomes a constant audition, exhaustion is inevitable. So ask yourself this, without trying to fix it immediately. When did life stop feeling like an experience and start feeling like a test? Tests create fear. Fear creates paralysis. And paralysis looks like being stuck. The way out is not to pass the test. It's to stop treating life like one. You are allowed to learn in public. You are allowed to be bad at things. You are allowed to start over without explanation. No one is keeping score except you. And even you are using rules that no longer serve you. There's another layer to being stuck that people rarely talk about. Sometimes you're stuck because you're grieving a life you thought you'd have. Not openly, not consciously, but quietly. You grieve the person you thought you'd be by now. You grieve relationships that didn't become what you imagined. You grieve opportunities that passed, or paths you didn't take. And grief takes energy. Unprocessed grief turns into heaviness, indecision, and emotional fatigue. You can't rush it. You can't outwork it. You have to acknowledge it. It's okay to mourn what didn't happen. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you cared. And caring is not a weakness. Once you let yourself grieve, something shifts. The weight doesn't disappear, but it becomes carryable. And suddenly, movement becomes possible again. Not because life is clear, but because it's lighter. Another reason you might feel stuck is because you're trying to do everything alone. Hyperindependence is often a trauma response. It looks like strength, but it's rooted in the belief that relying on others is dangerous or disappointing. So you carry everything yourself. Your plans, your doubts, your emotions, your responsibilities. And eventually, you collapse under the weight. You don't need to share everything. You don't need to overshare. You don't need to explain your entire inner world. But you do need connection. Someone to witness you. Someone to remind you that you're real outside your own head. Isolation makes problems feel permanent. Connection introduces perspective. And perspective creates movement. If you're listening to this alone, that doesn't mean you're alone. It means you're reaching. And reaching is the opposite of being stuck. You might also be stuck because you've been living in the future, always planning, always anticipating, always worrying about what's next. The future is important, but living there full-time creates anxiety. Anxiety freezes action, because nothing you do ever feels enough. You can't live your way into the future. You can only live in the present. And the present is where all change happens. Right now, in this moment, you are safe enough to take the next small step. Not the perfect step, not the smartest step, just the next honest one. You don't need certainty to move forward. You need courage to move without it. And courage doesn't feel like confidence. It feels like tension in your chest and movement anyway. If you're waiting for fear to disappear before you act, you'll be waiting forever. Fear comes with growth. The difference is, at some point, you stop letting it decide for you. You let it come along, but you drive. Being stuck ends when you stop asking what goes wrong and start asking, what if I stay here? Stagnation has a cost. It costs time. It costs self-trust. It costs belief. And you feel that cost every day. So don't think of movement as risk. Think of staying still as a greater risk. You don't have to leap. You just have to lean forward. Even slightly. That's enough. Take another breath. Notice that nothing bad happened while you were listening. You didn't fall apart. You didn't lose control. You're still here. That means you can handle the next step too. Let's stay with it. There's a quiet fear that lives underneath feeling stuck, and it doesn't get named often. It's the fear that if you really try, if you give your full effort, and it still doesn't work, then there will be no excuses left, no explanations, just the possibility that it wasn't meant to happen. So instead, you hover, half trying, half wanting, keeping one foot out the door so you can always say, I didn't really go all in. That's not self-sabotage. That's self-protection. Because disappointment hurts more when you were sincere. But living halfway hurts too. Just slower, quieter, every day. So you end up exhausted from doing nothing and ashamed for not doing more. That internal conflict drains your life force. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear but need to. You will never eliminate the possibility of regret. You can only choose which regret you're willing to live with. The regret of trying and failing, or the regret of never knowing. The second one lasts longer. Right now, you might be waiting for permission from someone, from circumstances, from a sign that says, now it's safe. That sign rarely comes. Life doesn't give green lights. It gives windows. And windows don't stay open forever. That doesn't mean panic. It means awareness. Awareness that this moment matters, even if it feels ordinary. You don't need a dramatic turning point. Those are rare and often misleading. Most lives change through quiet consistency. People don't wake up transformed. They wake up slightly more honest than the day before. And honesty compounds. Another reason you might feel stuck is because you've tied your worth to outcomes. If you succeed, you matter. If you fail, you don't. That's a brutal way to live. It turns every action into a judgment of your value. So, of course, you freeze. If every step is a verdict, you'll avoid walking altogether. Your worth is not something you earn through productivity. It exists before effort. When you forget that, you start using achievement as emotional survival, and that never ends well. You don't need to prove that you deserve space in the world. You already occupy it. From that place, action becomes lighter. Not easy, but lighter. You move because you want to express yourself, not because you're trying to justify yourself. That shift changes everything. If you're stuck, you might also be overthinking your next move, trying to optimize every decision, trying to avoid mistakes, trying to choose the best path. But the best path doesn't exist. There is no perfect direction, only directions that teach you something. Clarity is not found by thinking harder. It's found by engaging. You learn who you are by watching yourself act, not by imagining every possible future. Thinking feels safe because it creates the illusion of control. But too much thinking becomes another form of avoidance. At some point, you have to trade analysis for experience. And yes, that means some choices won't work. That's not a disaster. That's data. You're not supposed to get everything right. You're supposed to adjust. Life is iterative, not linear. If you've been stuck, it might be because you've been demanding certainty in a system built on uncertainty. That demand creates tension, and tension creates paralysis. Let go of the need to know how it ends. Focus on what's asking for your attention right now. What's the smallest thing you've been postponing? Not the biggest dream, not the long-term goal. The smallest thing, a message you haven't sent, a task you keep rescheduling, a truth you haven't admitted. Do that, not because it will change your life overnight, but because it breaks the spell of avoidance. Movement interrupts stagnation, even imperfect movement. And once the spell is broken, things begin to flow again, slowly, naturally, without force. You may not feel different immediately. That's okay. Change often happens beneath awareness first, like roots growing underground before anything appears on the surface. Trust that process. You don't need constant reassurance. You need patience with yourself, with your timing, with your unfolding. You are not a machine. You don't progress in straight lines. You move in cycles, expansion, rest, confusion, clarity, then back again. Being stuck is often just a rest phase you're judging instead of honoring. Rest doesn't mean giving up. It means integration. But rest turns into stagnation when it's filled with self-criticism. So if you're resting, rest fully, without guilt, without mental punishment. That alone can restore energy. And energy creates movement. If you made it this far, let this land. You are not failing at life. Life is working on you, shaping you, refining you, preparing you for something that requires more depth than you had before. Depth takes time. And time doesn't mean you're late. It means you're becoming. Stay here a little longer. You don't have to rush back into doing. Just listening is already a form of alignment. Let this be the closing, not as an ending, but as a settling. If you're still here, then something important has already happened. You stayed. You didn't escape the feeling. You didn't run from the discomfort. You let yourself sit with it. And that alone is movement, not the kind that shows up on the outside, the kind that rearranges things inside. Being stuck is often misunderstood as a lack of action, but more often, it's a moment of reorientation, like a compass spinning before it locks onto a new direction. The spinning feels unsettling, disorienting, but it's part of finding true north. Right now, you don't need answers. You don't need clarity. You don't need certainty. You need compassion for the version of you that got tired, the version that tried, the version that hoped, the version that carried expectations that were too heavy for too long. You didn't stop because you're weak. You stopped because something in you needed care. And care is not the opposite of progress. It's the foundation of it. There's a quiet strength in choosing not to abandon yourself just because things didn't unfold the way you expected. In staying kind to yourself when it would be easier to be harsh. In allowing rest without turning it into shame. That strength doesn't shout. It whispers. And it's been whispering to you this whole time. You don't have to transform your life after this. You don't have to wake up tomorrow as a new person. All you have to do is not betray yourself. Not with lies. Not with cruelty. Not with impossible standards. Just one honest choice at a time. Some days, that choice will look like action. Other days, it will look like rest. Both count. You are not here to meet an invisible deadline. You are here to live a life that feels like it belongs to you. And that takes listening, and patience, and courage. Courage not to rush. Courage not to compare. Courage not to give up on yourself just because the path isn't clear yet. The fog doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're walking somewhere unfamiliar. And unfamiliar doesn't mean wrong. It means new. So if you feel stuck, let this be what you carry with you. You're allowed to move slowly. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to become someone you didn't plan on being. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is ruined. Nothing is over. This moment is not a dead end. It's a pause. And pauses are not empty. They're where breath returns, where tension loosens, where truth rises to the surface. You don't need to force the next step. When it's time, you'll feel a quiet pull. Not urgency, not panic, just a gentle knowing. Until then, stay present. Stay kind. Stay. That's enough.